What do you do? What do you do? Alright, so this is a recapitulation of Hubbard's Slaves of Sleep. Um, this is whom was a Pulp Fiction magazine writer from the early 20th century, and I have here his bestseller, his first bestseller, Slaves of Sleep, Pulp Fiction story, and it's basically about, the setting is based on like Oriental, Middle Eastern story, Middle Eastern, ancient Middle Eastern story, where archaeologists, I believe, in the present time or like in the future, like in this fantasy futuristic present time, transitions to a different world every time he goes to sleep. And it's really action packed. Like there's lots of action. Like next thing you know, there's somebody getting beaten up. Next thing you know, someone gets sliced by a huge, monster like creature. And the most common monsters here is like a horse. They have hoofs, like monsters that have hoofs and horns, and they're beasts. They're hairy, and there's there's a scene. All right, so I love it. It's really action packed. It's it starts off like with the main character protagonist, Jan. He has a discussion. Who's a blonde, blue-eyed guy with a purple suit? He's he Yeah, he was having a discussion with the professor, and they're like the professor wants to finesse him from his this little bottle that contains a monster, but unfortunately he wasn't successful, and he comes back during the night to steal it from him, and he fails miserably. He opens up the bottle accidentally, and then the monster is summoned, is conjured, and it kills him. Eventually it ultimately just kills him. By slicing him in half, blood everywhere, squirting. Is brutal. And then in the next chapter, he goes to sleep. He finally just goes to sleep. He gets sent to jail. People don't believe him that he was killed by a monster. The professor was killed by a monster, so they sent him to jail. The investigators. And then he goes to sleep in jail, and then he wakes up in this very like bedlam in situation in a ship, or in a boat, more like in a boat. And apparently he was supposed to be like he was supposed to be like a watching out the boat during the night, and he didn't do it. So the main protagonist for the other story is Tiger. The name is Tiger, and he wakes up in a boat. He's supposed to like steer the boat. He's like in a maneuvering conducting area of the boat, of the ship, or whatever it's called. And he doesn't properly do that because he just woke up out of nowhere in this old world in the Middle East, Mediterranean. And so he doesn't. What else is there? All right, so and then this is the second action aspect. He I believe. Oh yeah, he doesn't watch out. He doesn't steer the conduct the boat, and so a bunch of men like left and right start bullying him browbeating him, like just bullying him, assaulting him, you know, grabbing him, verbally abusing him. And Tiger's like completely confused. He has no idea what's going on, because you know he just woke up in the situation. Eventually, well, the captain in the boat is like really demanding. He gets whipped in the back 12 times for disobeying the captain. The captain just manhandles Tiger in his boat. Eventually, rendezvous. They have a rendezvous in in the captain's office area or room in the ship. And Tiger eventually tells his captain all this stuff that's going on. Like, he's not really Tiger. He's conjured a monster in his other dimension. And the captain starts contemplating, thinking about things, whether he should believe him or not. And then eventually he just goes to sleep, and he goes back to the jail, to Jan's body. He goes back to his own body. He goes back to Jan's body. And the woman and the police officers and his co-workers eventually meet him in the jail again, and try to get everything situated and what he's gonna say because there's due process. You can't just what he's gonna do to the due process aspect. Like, is he gonna tell the truth, keep on telling the truth, or he's gonna lie so he can just get out of jail and say and plead guilty and say that, oh well, I did kill him, so you can leave the courts because that's more believable story. Or he's gonna just stick it to the truth and say that there was a monster that killed Jen, the professor. And his coworkers and people that trying to get him out of jail don't believe him and just try to tell him that you could alter the story into a realistic version and not this really supernatural, superstitious story. But Jan, he's a lucid person, so he decides to just stick to the truth and see what happens in the due process in the courts.